You can support this podcast for $3 a month at patreon.com/copytradersclub. Or find me on eToro, username Gavin McCauley, and add me to a watch list for future content. Thanks for listening. Copytraders Club, where you can learn how to make better decisions and more money copy trading. I'm Gavin McCauley, my name and username on eToro. My aim as an eToro enthusiast is to demystify this new and uncharted world of copy trading, understand what are the pitfalls and best practices, and how ultimately to succeed as a copy trader. Here we go. Yes, indeed. Copytraders Club, Series 3, Episode 23. And for this 20-minute check-in, I'm thrilled to welcome Wesl3y, a.k.a. Wesl3y. How are you, Wes?
I'm fantastic, Gav. How are you doing?
Doing very well. All the better for seeing you. Now, you've been on twice before. Once for a long-form chat, which I will link to in the show notes, for those who want to explore Wes more deeply. That's not an off-putting turn of phrase. And your second appearance was in a round table chat. So here you are checking in with us again.
That's right.
Now, this is the check-in, so we'll chat a little bit, and then we will have a series of questions whose numbers are randomly selected from a predetermined bunch of questions. That's the idea behind this. So it's a little bit lighter and a little bit more scattergun than previous conversations, because it's just a check-in. Just want to check in and see how you're doing since the last time we spoke. Speaking of which, in terms of portfolio performance, you have had a pretty rocky time of it in recent years, let's say. How much of a relief is it for you to be seeing good numbers in 2023 year to date?
Well, I think that no matter how experienced you are as an investor, how many years you have under the belt, decades in, you're obviously going to feel a lot better when the markets are moving in your favor. I guess the secret to being successful in the long term is just to not let those emotions affect the way that you invest. But the short answer is, yeah, it feels great.
And everybody talks about not letting their emotions get in the way. Do you really practice that? I mean, or is it a continuous struggle, or are you now in sort of the level of experience where you've no problem keeping emotions at bay?
I wouldn't say it is a continuous struggle. I think it's like anything. It takes time to be introspective, recognize your behavior and your thoughts, and then not let them rule you. Instead, for you to understand what's happening, feel the feelings, but not necessarily let those drive your actions. So, I mean, I still feel those feelings, and I just recognize them and then put them to a side. I think what also really helps is if you are, not everyone's analytical, but if you're an analytical person and you have a plan, you've got things written down and you can come back to that plan and revisit, I'm doing ABC and I'm doing it for these reasons. Are the reasons still valid? Yeah. Or no, let's change.
Okay, now, before we get into the random questions, I know you're a man with several business interests. Any new or exciting ones been occupying your time recently?
Yeah, I would say probably two areas that have been dominating a lot of my time there are small private businesses that I either provide consulting services to, or I'm an investor in those companies, almost entirely in the UK. And the economic situation has presented challenges for a number of these businesses. So it's been working with these companies. There's been a huge shift in the way that these companies need to behave in order to be successful. And some of them, I'm not sure if they will be successful long term. It just depends on the type of industry, and access to money has become a lot harder to come by. So I've seen enormous down rounds in just about every company that is raising money, even if they're very successful. For example, I'm not very senior in this company at all, but there's a company called Free Trade, and I've invested through a crowdfunding kind of mechanism in the UK. And this company is destroying the competition in the UK. But they just had a down round that meant that 75% of their share price had been shaved off since the last round. So that's one area, spending a fair amount of my time there. And then there is a business that I've been working on with a couple of friends of mine, long-term friends, to build out some tooling for people that are looking to invest. But that's going to be a long time until we launch that, just so that we can establish a baseline.
Okay, very interesting. Shall we move over to our randomly selected questions?
I would love to.
They're not randomly selected questions, but the numbers are. Number 7. What's your biggest mistake in the last 12 months?
I think that one, if it's with regards to investing on eToro, which I'm guessing it is. So I think it was within the last 12 months, my largest mistake with regards to investment on eToro would have been an investment in a company called Cineworld. So this is a very large chain of cinemas in the UK and also abroad. And it is a company that historically has dominated the market when it comes to cinemas and making movies. It's had a very difficult time through the pandemic because everything shut down. So they weren't making any revenue, and they had taken on a lot of debt. And I think if that was just the challenge, they probably would have come out of this successful. But at the same time, they'd tried to acquire another company in Canada, and they'd pulled out at the last minute, and that company had sued them for breaking the contract. And so I think I didn't properly weigh up the risks there. And then the company filed for bankruptcy. And it hasn't done very well since then, but I exited just after that announcement.
I see they're no longer in your portfolio. I'll just do a little bit of screen sharing here.
No, they aren't.
We sort of have a little look around here as we go through these questions just to see if we're discussing anything of relevance. We mentioned previously your last few years of results. Let me just bring those up. Yeah, 2021 and 2022, both starting with that pesky little minus figure. But sizable difference between the actual figure that follows the minus. And so far this year to date, just shy of 30%.
That's right.
Okay. Next random question is number 18. Is there anything you believe in that people often poo-poo?
In what regard? I mean, that's quite a broad statement. Is that with regards to a company or an approach to investing? Or?
Well, what's the first thing that pops into your head?
Is there anything I believe in that people poo-poo?
Maybe even in life?
It depends on the group of people, but I guess something that I think that has value, that is dismissed by a large group of investors, is technical analysis. So, for example, there are, I would say, the group of people that call themselves traditional value investors will traditionally focus on bottom-up investment. They'll just look at the company and the details of that business. But there is something to be said for TA when looking at, I guess, entry points or exit points. It's not something you want to use or that should give a lot of weight to your style all of the time, but TA does work. The very most basic TA, I think, can work quite often because it is giving you insight into the psychology of the market overall and their behavior with regards to a certain asset.
Very good. Next number is 35. If you were to start your PI career all over again, what would you do differently?
That's again quite a broad, big question. I think that being a popular investor on eToro's platform is similar to building a business. And so the things that you do in the beginning of building a business are not necessarily the same things that you do once you've acquired a few customers, once you're a medium-sized business, once you're a large corporation, etc. So I think that the things that I did at the beginning, without realizing it, were the right things to do. So if you've got no copiers, you probably want to manage your risk effectively, but you probably want to differentiate yourself in some way, which might include gains beyond what the rest of the PIs have, in which case you're probably taking on slightly more risk than the rest in order to try achieve those gains.
Next question, 31. These questions are all a bit much of a muchness, but you'll enjoy this one. How would you rate your performance over the last 6 months?
Great. I mean, I wouldn't. This is the same message that I bang on and on about. I wouldn't really consider reviewing a performance over a 6-month period because it's too short. But I'm happy with how the portfolio has performed. And if the next 6 months were the same, great.
Okay, there is one question I did want to ask you. I'm not sure how I'm going to fit it in, but there's one company that you often talk about in your videos, or maybe just the videos that I've watched, but you've talked about it for quite a long time, believe in the company.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about Digital Turbine, which has been through the mill recently, and the price is incredibly depressed. So what I'm wondering is, has the story changed, or is that just exceptional value at the moment? I wonder, what are your current thoughts, Digital Turbine?
So I don't think the story has changed. We're at the moment, the world is in the economic part of the cycle where a lot of companies have a challenging time generating revenue and therefore profitability. And this has not affected very large companies in the US, technology companies, very much. It's the mid caps and the small caps, of which Digital Turbine is one, that have been more affected. And there's a tendency amongst investors to behave like the rest of the herd, right? So when something has been sold out, they tend to sell out of it too. But Digital Turbine continues to be the only company of its kind that's able to provide end-to-end mobile advertising services. It owns each part of that chain and has a very good service in each part. It's got contracts with huge mobile companies around the world. So I think it is incredible value. We're just in the part of the economic cycle. Their revenues are very closely correlated to the number of mobile phones, and particularly Android phones, that are sold out there, and people aren't spending as much money on that kind of stuff right now. So the only thing that worries me a little bit is that they could get acquired on the cheap at the moment, although I still think it would be a multiple of the current value. But if the economic cycle is allowed to come back, well, if the economic cycle comes back and the company is bought out, then I think that they will climb quite aggressively. They're a fantastic high margin business, great product. So yeah, I still like them. I mean, there are other great companies that have been through this kind of rinser before, right? They're not the first successful business that's seen their share price drop by such an enormous amount.
Sure. Well, thank you for sharing your opinions on that. As you can see from the banner I put up, Nothing on Copytraders Club is ever financial advice, including the discussion of whether digital turbine is great value right now. Although I do think people on YouTube go to town on all this, disclaimers, as if anyone's going to come after, a video like this. Anyway, next question. 24. It's time for a silly one, I would have thought. No, not really. What's the most annoying question you get asked by copiers? I suspect it's when am I going to be in profit?
I guess there's a basket of when am I going to be in profits. There are also questions that are, I think, around misunderstandings that are repeated. So when am I going to be in profits? How much should I copy with? I guess, don't you want to take profits?
Should I copy up in trades?
Should I copy up in trades? Should I take profits? Shouldn't you be taking profits on X because it's in the profit now for us?
I saw that one actually just recently on your page.
Yeah. So I don't think that I think people there's a very large volume of people, and the messaging is very hard to get out to those people. So it ends up being quite a lot of repetition. But that happens in all walks of life. I've got young children. There's a lot of repetition. When I worked at very large multinational corporations, there's a lot of repetition to the teams that you work with. So I don't think it's a thing particular to eToro.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, quite a lot of your copiers who maybe started like 2 years ago or so, or 2.5 years ago, there's still a fair way back for them. So, I guess that's why those questions arise frequently.
Yeah, I understand.
Although I have to commend you on your ability to keep your videos going with such regularity.
Yeah, that's I think consistency in anything, in any part of life is necessary. I mean, you do the same thing, right?
Well, not so much on the portfolio updates. I missed 1 month there recently on my own. And, well, I mean, I don't have the copier base that you do clamoring for information. It's fair to say.
Yeah. But I think even if you're someone starting out, whether it's on eToro or a blog or on Twitter, for the first year, you need to be prepared, or even 2 years, you need to be prepared to shout into the void, right? Sure. And then build up that content.
Oh, I've been shouting into the void for years in all sorts of ways. Okay, number 43. Here's a question that's slightly different from the previous. When was the last time you bought a lottery ticket?
A lottery ticket? Not so long ago, I think. Probably about a month ago.
Oh, I was expecting you to say it's been years. Was this because the jackpot was big, or what? Why did the mood just take you? Explain the circumstances.
It was probably because the jackpot is big, but I mean, I did it a month ago. I don't do it every month. I might participate twice a year because I know, the analytical part of me is like, this is ridiculous. This is like burning your money, except you don't get the warmth from the fire, right? Mm-hmm. And it might be a habit I picked up from my father, who plays the lottery week in, week out in South Africa. Plus,
statistically, you're less likely to win on those big jackpots because everyone's buying loads of tickets, surely. It's the little couple of million ones that that don't attract attention.
The odds are the same, aren't they? The stats. So there are a certain number of numbers, and if your number comes up, you win. And it's the same set of numbers available to everyone. This is true,
but then having to share it, then it's a bigger pot to share. Yeah, all right, okay.
If you have to share 40 million, I think might be okay.
Woe is me. Okay, last question.
Sure.
Oh, no, I'm not going to ask that one as last question. I'll change it. Don't fancy that one either. It's supposed to be random, but I keep overruling what comes up.
You're cheating.
Okay. 19 says, what's stopping you having twice the copiers you do?
That's an interesting question. I think that's a question that most popular investors are asking themselves. I guess there are a few things that would stop my volume of copiers. The one would be recent history, so 2022 and 2021. I hope that people are looking at least that far back through everyone's history, preferably more. And I think that, again, given the current economic conditions, there might be fewer people willing to invest. So I think that you don't really have control over that part. But if you are reading earnings reports from various businesses, and I read reports from companies that don't invest in either, just to get a feel for the industries, there are far fewer people participating in many areas of the economy, including investment. And I think we're going to see a lot of that in the next earnings season that's coming up right now. The big banks in the US are starting to report this Friday.
Yeah.
So I think probably some combination of those two factors.
Okay, fantastic. Our time is up. We've actually overrun slightly. It's such a delight to talk to you, Wesley. I've exceeded the time limit. Well, thank you very much for dropping by once again.
Yeah, happy to meet up and have a chat.
Yeah, and I'm sure the viewer joins me in wishing you all the very best in the future.
Thank you. You too.
That's all from me. See you on Discord and Facebook. Until next time we meet at Copytraders Club, I wish you many happy returns. Obviously, anything you hear in this podcast is for entertainment only, not financial advice. Do your own research. This is just generic chit-chat. We don't know your individual circumstances, etc., and so forth.